Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I am your host, Nelson, here on this very beautiful Tuesday afternoon. And I say it's beautiful because the Pacers finally get what's coming to them. Finally, they get what's coming to them. They get swept. It was beautiful. It was fantastic. It was glorious. It was the best day of my life. The best night, without a doubt. Wasn't the best game, however. Well, at least compared to the other games that I saw, but it was better than game two. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in the first segment, so that's going to be segment one. Then in the second segment, we're going to focus more on Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, and I will explain exactly what I mean by that later, on in the first segment. Then in the third segment, in anticipation of Luka and Kyrie going up against the Timberwolves later tonight, I'm going to be going over some of the most iconic backcourt duos in the history of the NBA that I could name, and in my opinion have contributed a lot to the NBA, whether it be recently or over the history, and you'll see that third segment. And now in the fourth segment, we have your favorite Cavs drama, because that's literally the only thing that's going on in this offseason that anyone is talking about. So we also have a special fifth segment later at the end, so be sure to stay tuned for that. I reveal that at the end of the fourth segment. Before I begin, however, I'd like to remind everybody to please use the link in the description to get your comments recognized, or use the link displayed below the ticker on every single show segment. It's the exact same link. It is GSMCPodcast.net. It really helps the show, makes the show much more interactive between myself and you guys. Once again, the link is GSMCPodcast.net. And with that out of the way, we can go right ahead and talk about the final game of the series between the Celtics and the Pacers. Therefore, the Celtics, they've swept them. It's beautiful. It's absolutely fantastic. The results of this game were nothing short of spectacular. I love every second of the game. It was just perfect. Just watching the Pacers have a huge lead in this game and have a 94% chance of winning the game, all just to blow it in the end. Beautiful. It's just it makes New York fans cry everywhere. It is beautiful. And that was really the only reason why I was rooting for the Celtics so hard in this series, because I just did not appreciate how the Pacers treated the New York Knicks. It was very rude. They were mean. They bullied them. They hit them. They kicked them when they were down. It was gross. I did not like it at all. And they got what they deserved. And there's going to be a lot of asterisks going around with the Celtics team, and there's going to be a lot of doubt going around with the Celtics team as they approach the NBA Finals, because when it comes right down to it, this Celtics team, similar to the Pacers, they've only won and they've only beaten injured teams. And there's arguments now saying that this road to the finals coming in from the Celtics was arguably the easiest road to the finals in the history of the NBA. So Jimmy Butler was out for the entirety of round one, and Terry Rozier was also out for a little bit of the series as well. Then in round two, going up against the Cavs and Donovan Mitchell goes out in game two, therefore sidelining him for the rest of the games. Or he goes out after game two, and then he gets sidelined. And Jarrett Allen doesn't play at all throughout the entirety of the series. Those are two very important players to the Cavs roster that the Celtics did not have to worry about. Then, now with the Pacers, Tyrese Halliburton got hurt towards the end of game two, and therefore he could not play for half the series. And again, that's just another team that the Celtics had to beat that was just injured, and it sort of made their road way easier than what a lot of people were expecting. And injuries, they are part of the game, without a doubt, and that is something that unfortunately happens to all the teams in whichever situation you can think of. But you can't really take away what they've done just due to injuries. We can't put asterisks on them all the time. I mean, it's the same thing that they did with Giannis Antetokounmpo when Giannis won the championship after Kevin Durant got hurt, James Harden got hurt, and several other players in the Western Conference also got hurt, making their opponent, the Phoenix Suns, a much easier opponent for them as well. And on top of that, the rest of the Chris Paul getting injured as well, and it's just all these kinds of things is like all these asterisks that they put on these players and their accomplishments. It's really it's starting to get old. Like I'm getting really sick of it. But aside from that, in this game, Jaylen Brown, he ended with 29 points, 6 rebounds, and 2 assists. He also claims he is also the Eastern Conference Finals MVP. I have no idea why for some reason. Maybe it's because maybe if I shorten it in size, you'll be able to see most of it. And yeah, hold on. Let me just go ahead and fix that a little bit real quick. But these are Jason Tatum's stats as well. He was not deemed the Finals MVP. We'll talk a little bit about that later. But these are his very solid stats coming in, and I'm just adjusting the window just a little bit so you could see the stats just a bit better. So, for those of you guys on the audio side, you can't really see that, but I am like sort of adjusting the size of the font so that way, you know, it could fit properly within the box. And oh, that was complete accident, technical difficulties, my bad. Let me just bring that back up. My bad, guys, that was an accident. Ugh. So yeah, Jaylen Brown played a very phenomenal game. 29 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists. He wasn't the best player on the... I mean, his stats are very good. I mean, but I don't really feel like he was the best player on the floor. When you look at Jason Tatum's numbers, he got 26 points, 13 rebounds, and 8 assists. And obviously, the rebounding gives him a very huge, plus with a lot of these... with a lot of the metrics, given how these rebounds, they're very impressive. There's no way to argue the fact that these rebounds aren't impressive. Hold on, let me just adjust this font real quick. And the passing from Jason Tatum in this series has been very good, along with the ability to protect the ball coming in from the rest of the players. I'm just adjusting the window yet again. It looks a little weird, and I don't really like how weird it looks, but whatever. We'll deal with it. So these are obviously the stats that I said before, and this game was about the Pacers having a huge lead. They've had this several times throughout the series. Like, I believe it was in game 1, they had a 96% chance of, at least according to the odds, they had a 96% chance of beating the Celtics towards the fourth quarter and around the end of it. But then Jaylen Brown hits the game winner and sends the game into overtime, and they end up winning. So it's and not to mention in this game 4, they also had around the 90% chance of winning with 4 minutes left in the game, and the Pacers, they just blow it. Now, they've blown it several times. This is so it shows they could have won these games in the series, and they could have made the series a little bit more competitive, even without the presence of Tyrese Halliburton. I mean, having a 90% chance of winning a game with 4 minutes left in the fourth, that is a choke. That is a genuine choke job. And even though the Pacers didn't have Tyrese, they still had a very good chance of winning this game. They just didn't capitalize when they needed to. And it's really unfortunate for a player like Andrew Nembhard, who dropped 24 points and 10 assists in this final game of the series. Pascal Siakam also played well. He ended the game with 19 points and 10 rebounds. And the team as a whole, they played really well. Aaron Naismith, he ended the game with 14 and 6. And the shooting and the efficiency from the team just wasn't really there from 3. I mean, they shot 34% as a team. It's okay, but it wasn't enough to beat the Boston Celtics or their high-powered offense. And even with their high-powered offense, they also had something that the Pacers didn't have, which was their incredible defense. And I feel like that was really the big difference maker in this series between both of those teams, because when the going got tough, especially in game 3, they needed the Celtics desperately needed a stop. Their offense didn't work, and they desperately needed a stop late in the game, and they got one from Drew Holiday. So with that in mind, I feel like the defense was a very huge factor in this game and in the rest of the series as a whole. Now, the next finals game, unfortunately, isn't until a while. Like, it's not until June 6th where the finals start up again. So it's a very long wait, but aside from that, these games they've been rather impressive. I really like the only blowout that happened in this game that happened in the series, I should say, was game 2. Because game 2 was the only blowout, and in game 1, the game, again, it went into overtime. So even though the Celtics, they won by a considerable amount in overtime, it's not really a blowout win, I don't think. Now, one thing that should be noted about the Celtics is the fact that they are undefeated on the road. They have yet to lose a game on the road in the playoffs this postseason. And that is a very important factor to take note of, because it shows that even when the other team has home field advantage, they still can keep their composure and pull out throughout the rest of the series. And I mean, being undefeated, the fact that they've lost more games at home in these playoffs than they've lost away games is very, very impressive, because one of the things that the Celtics were notorious for struggling over was being unable to play games away. But it also, again, it could also hurt the Celtics team, the fact that they lose, or that all of their playoff losses have come at home. Like, that's a really bad thing to think about. But aside from that, they've been playing phenomenal in the postseason, and we're out of time for this first segment. So now I will go ahead and go into the second segment, where we focus a little bit more on Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, and who I believe deserves the Eastern Conference Finals MVP. I can't say Finals MVP because it's Eastern Conference Finals MVP. So I will be right back after this short break. Stay tuned.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown. Get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
And we are back with the second segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this second segment, we are going to be talking about Jaylen Brown and his Eastern Conference Finals MVP, as well as whether or not he deserves it and what the narratives are about the award itself. Before I begin, however, I'd like to remind everybody to please go ahead, use the link in the description to get your comments recognized, or the link displayed below the ticker on every single show segment. The link is is GSMCPodcast.net. It really helps the show, makes the show much more interactive between myself and you guys. Once again, the link is GSMCPodcast.net. And with that out of the way, we can go right ahead and go into the next segment, which is going to be focusing on the Eastern Conference Finals MVP, Jaylen Brown. So here are his numbers. This is his field goal percentage. And okay, why does it keep doing that? You love it. There we go. So those are the numbers that Jaylen Brown has been averaging throughout the Eastern Conference Finals. Around 30 points per game. His average is like 29.8, but like that's basically 30 points per game. 5 rebounds per game and 3 assists per game. He also averages 2 steals per game while also averaging 51% from the field and 37% from the three-point line. Now, if you're wondering what his true shooting percentages are, because like that's basically like the new advanced analytic that takes account for field goal percentage, 3-point percentage, and free throw shooting percentage. In the fourth round, not in the fourth round, but in the third round, let me just go ahead and pull up that number right here, right now. Let me just see, because this number is very weird to calculate. I have no idea how they calculate this number, but it is a calculable number. I'm just going to go ahead and try and find out what it is. So his true shooting percentage in the Eastern Conference Finals is 59.6, which isn't bad at all. It's really not bad. What really brings him down is his free throw shooting percentage, because his free throw shooting is not really the best. And it wasn't the best in this series whatsoever. And he's shooting 65% from the free throw line, which is, for a guard, it's really bad. Like, okay, brightness, like I get it, son, you can stop. But yeah, so the free throw shooting is what brings down his percentages and in the true shooting department. So aside from the free throw, his shooting is very efficient. And these are very solid numbers coming in from Jaylen Brown. However, here are Jason Tatum's numbers. As you could see, he also averages 30 points per game, but he also, hold on just one second. Yeah, he also averages 30 points per game, and then he also averages 10 rebounds per game, along with 6 assists as well. And these are a lot better all-around numbers. While on top of that, he's also able to tally at least 1 steal, like 1.3 steals per game. That's still really impressive. The difference is his field goal percentage and his 3-point shooting percentage. This series, he was not a very efficient shooter from deep, but he wasn't really, compared to Jaylen Brown, he wasn't as efficient from the field either. And it makes sense how Jason Tatum's, like, his field goal percentage is going to be a little bit worse than Jaylen Brown's field goal percentage. The degree of difficulty on Tatum's shots is a lot more common than Jaylen Brown's shot selection. Like, Jason Tatum is more prone to taking difficult and contested shots as opposed to Jaylen Brown is, but I'm not saying that Jaylen Brown doesn't take these contested shots. It's just Jason Tatum and his mindset around Jason Tatum, he has the Mamba mentality, and I'm just going to go ahead and look at his true shooting stats right here. I'm just pulling them up on my phone right now. Hold on. Just pulling these up, seeing what he has, and he's averaging 56.4 true shooting. So that's his true shooting percentage, which is worse than Jaylen Brown's. Now, but when you look at the rest of the stats at face value, 30, 10, and 6, you'd think that Jason Tatum would deserve the Eastern Conference Finals MVP. Like, it's marginal. It's really close. So Eastern Conference Finals MVP, that's a relatively new award. They didn't start giving those out until, like, I believe it was last season. And it's really new, and it's something that sort of awards the players the same way that it awards finals MVPs, but just in, their respective conference finals. Now, it's a little bit unfortunate that they introduced this now. It really should be called the LeBron James Eastern Conference Finals MVP, because he would have won that award 8 straight years, without, hands down, without a doubt. It's really annoying that they had to add this like immediately after LeBron, leaves the Eastern Conference and is out of his prime and not in the finals anymore. But aside from that, very well deserved for Jaylen Brown, I believe. And I genuinely think that he deserves this Eastern Conference Finals MVP more than Jason Tatum. Like, I agree, Jason Tatum, he has the counting stats. Like, you can see the difference between the rebounds and the assists between those two. Like, you see 5 rebounds to 10 rebounds per game, 3 assists to 6 assists per game. It's essentially double of what Jaylen Brown is producing. And so whenever someone is producing double the stats while at the same time producing the exact same amount of points, you would think that he would win the Eastern Conference Finals MVP. Like, that's just a basic gimmick. However, one thing that I believe the Celtics are taking into consideration is the fact that Jaylen Brown wasn't a part of any All-NBA team. Jason Tatum was a part of the All-NBA first team. So maybe this award was sort of like to recognize Jaylen Brown, like, the Celtics' way of recognizing Jaylen Brown as opposed to just constantly recognizing Tatum. I mean, Jaylen Brown himself was also that surprised with the results. He was saying, I never win anything, so I'm very surprised with... He literally said, I never win anything. So, I mean, all power to him for winning this award, especially winning it over Jason Tatum. But if we're going to look on the numbers alone, and assuming that, the fans voting didn't really have pity for Jaylen Brown, I still think, Jaylen Brown holds up pretty well in terms of stats. I mean, I understand he doesn't have the same amount of rebounds or the same amount of assists, but look at it this way. Jaylen Brown's main focus on the team is to put the ball in the basket and play defense. His rebounding, it's there if he needs it, but he's a guard. So it's not like the guards are really going to be looking for a rebound. He's a small forward / shooting guard. I mean, more or less a guard with how he plays and with the rest of the players in the rotation. And the assists, again, his goal is to put the ball in the hoop. So it's not really expected of him to get that many assists. Now, obviously, like, people are going to start wondering, okay, well, if it's not really his job to do all of that, but Tatum is doing all of that, then just give the award to Tatum. The biggest difference for me is efficiency. And Jaylen Brown's field goal percentage in this series compared to Jason Tatum's was so much better, especially considering how they both take difficult shots and difficult mid-range shots. And on top of that, Jaylen Brown's three-point percentage was way better than Jason Tatum's three-point percentage. Now, since they both take a high volume amount of shots from everywhere around the court, I don't expect Jaylen Brown or Tatum to shoot 40% in a series. That's like, I don't really expect that of them. But 36, 35, that's a relatively good three-point percentage for high volume shooters. And Jaylen Brown is at 37, which is incredibly more valuable than 30% coming in from Tatum. Not to mention, Jaylen Brown pushed the game into overtime in Game 1 and set the tone for the series. So that also should be taken into account with this award. And when you look at it that way, the Celtics would not have swept without winning that Game 1. And they wouldn't have won that Game 1 without Jaylen Brown. And Jaylen Brown continued to set the tone for the rest of the playoff series. So I think it's well deserved. And the only real thing that Tatum has over Jaylen Brown in this series is counting stats. And the counting stats are just coming in from rebounds. He's taller, so it makes sense that he gets rebounds, and they're mainly defensive rebounds. While the assists, they happen because Jason Tatum has the ball a little bit more, and his job is to facilitate and do a lot more than put the ball in the basket. So that's basically all the opinions that I have on the Eastern Conference Finals MVP. Definitely well-deserved coming in from Jaylen Brown. He has earned his money because if you guys remember, Jaylen Brown is the most paid player on the Celtics right now, most paid player in the league as well. So definitely deserve to win this. Now, we are out of time for the second segment, so now we will go ahead and go into the third segment, which is a little bit more fun than the rest of the other segments that I have lined up. So in anticipation for the Mavericks going up against the Timberwolves in the next game tonight, I'm going to talk about some notable backcourts in NBA history, seeing as how Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving are most likely going to be on this list if they end up winning a ring, or if they end up, staying iconic and popular and on the same team. So I will be right back after this short break. Stay tuned.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
And we are back with the third segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this third segment, we are going to be going over some of the most iconic NBA backcourts in the history of basketball and in the history of the NBA more specifically. I'm going to talk about, backcourts that were most common in history, some of the more iconic backcourts recently, like in recent history that I've watched as well, and of course, some of the best. Now, remember, this is iconic, so this means most popular backcourts in the history of the NBA. So it doesn't necessarily have to mean they are great. However, most of the time, if you are iconic, it means that you are great. Now, this is not going to be in any particular order. Again, this is just going to be a fun little thing that I have set. And while I am doing the list, I will give a ranking on where I would put them. But we'll start out with arguably one of the most iconic duos in the history of Nope, it's not pulling up for some reason, and I don't understand why. Just 1 second. Hold on. Yeah, I have no idea why the stats are not pulling up real quick. So just give me 1 second while I go ahead and fix that. Maybe it might be because I have both of these slides open now that I think about it. So let me just exit that out and let me try that again. Apologies for the delay. Did not mean for that to happen. It's kind of annoying, but why isn't it working? I don't know why it's not working now. It was working just fine before. Was it because I had the slide closed? Of course it was because I had the slide closed. Oh, that's great. That's kind of embarrassing. All right, there we go. So now we can actually start with this list. Jesus. I don't know why that took so long. I apologize for that. So first on the list is Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. In my opinion, they're by far the best backcourt duo in the history of the NBA. Their skill set is just extremely unmatched. Their duality and their chemistry, it's also unmatched. They're the best shooting backcourt duo in the history of basketball. There is no better duo that can shoot. And these guys, they have so many nicknames, but their most iconic nickname is the Splash Brothers, obviously. Like, and they're called the Splash Brothers for a reason. In almost every single playoff series, they will kill you from the three-point line. And Klay Thompson, he's had so many other nicknames as well. Game 6 Klay was born in 2016 when he went up against Oklahoma City, and he hit all of the threes. Every single one of them. It's like every single time in the postseason, you cannot leave either of these guys open because they will make you pay. They would go on some of the craziest runs in the postseason that made the game look easy. And combine that with playing with Kevin Durant for 2 years, or 3 years, I should be a little more specific. They were unstoppable. This duo was, and they won before having Kevin Durant, they won with Kevin Durant, and then they won after Kevin Durant. This duo has been iconic. It's been unstoppable for the longest time. And the only real stain on their legacy is them blowing a 3-1 lead to LeBron and the Cavs with, Kyrie and Kevin Love. But aside from that, they have nothing to worry about, and there's really no argument for them not being the best. I don't see any other duo that could be ranked better than them. I mean, Steph Curry, he's a dominant ball handler as well, and not to mention the shooting that they do in the postseason. It's ridiculous. They've sort of, like, with age and with Klay Thompson on the decline, it's sort of died down a little bit, but they were a force to be reckoned with in the postseason. Like, it was dangerous. So that's one dynamic duo that's down. Next we have, let me just go ahead and pull up the other one. Here we go. Manu Ginobili and Tony Parker. This is definitely Eric is definitely going to love this. Go ahead and watch the wrestling podcast if you haven't already. That he's the host for wrestling. But Eric, he loved the Spurs and when he watched basketball back in the day. And Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili are by far one of the most underrated backcourts in the history of the NBA, in my opinion. Definitely one of the most underrated. When they were on the Spurs, they won 4 championships together. Tony Parker won the Finals MVP in 2007. They were also paired up with Tim Duncan. The entire Spurs as a team, when they were that big three, along with, Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili, they never missed the playoffs. Ever. Every single year that they've played, they've always made it to the playoffs. And they have 4 championships to their name, and Tony Parker having a Finals MVP to his name. That it's more than iconic, but the thing is, the fact that they were on the Spurs and they weren't as flashy, they didn't really get that much attention from the media or the rest of the fans. But they slowly changed the game. Tony Parker was a wizard with the floaters. Like, that man could float the ball up, and he basically started floaters if you really want to be technical here. And Manu Ginobili, he started the Euro step as well. Now, obviously James Harden perfected it, but he was the start of it. And these two players, they quietly changed the game and how guards play. But no one really gives them their flowers, and no one really gives them credit for it. So figured I'd go ahead and give them that nod. Now, I would put Steph and Manu Ginobili, and I would put Steph, Klay, Manu, and Tony 1 and 2. So these two are 1 and 2. Now the rest are a little bit random, and the order that you put them in, it doesn't really matter to me. I haven't even decided the order yet. So next on the list is Isaiah Thomas and Joe Dumars. So I put both of them on here because they were part of the most iconic Detroit Pistons team of all time, the Bad Boy Pistons. They won back-to-back championships in the middle of Michael Jordan's prime in 88 and in 89, I believe it was. 89 and 90. Yes, I had the years right. Sorry, I wasn't born for that, ladies and gentlemen. 89 and 90, those were their those were their championship years, and obviously winning back-to-back. Joe Dumars and Isaiah Thomas, they won the Finals MVP respectively. So Joe Dumars won it one year, then Isaiah Thomas won it the other year. So it really goes to show like just how good this backcourt was. Even though most of the credit with the bad boy Pistons, like other than Isaiah Thomas, it goes to some of the other big men that were part of the roster, with, you know, Dennis Rodman being in that rotation as well. And Joe Dumars is a little bit like, not many people really remember what he did for the Pistons, like for his career. Like, he's one of those, he's only iconic in the eyes of Pistons fans, but everyone else doesn't really seem to like talk about him like that. And it's kind of rare and odd coming from a finals that, like, you know, the fact that he's a finals MVP and he doesn't really have as much recognition or fame like one, if that makes sense. But these two rings to their name and 2 rings for the Pistons, some of the only championships that the Pistons have won. So I definitely had to include them on this list because of how good they were as a team. Now, since we are talking about the Celtics, one of the main duos that came to my mind was Rondo and Ray Allen in the backcourt. They won only 1 championship with each other, which is kind of, you know, it's kind of underwhelming, but they were part of the big 3 with the Boston Celtics in 2008. And again, this is a list about being iconic. And when I was growing up watching basketball, these guys were without a doubt iconic, and I liked watching the 2 of them play. I loved watching Ray Allen shoot the ball, and I really liked watching Rondo pass the ball. His playmaking was unmatched. Playoff Rondo, one of my favorite players to watch. And it's really like, you know, combined with Ray Allen shooting, these 2 were a very lethal force because, you know, Ray Allen can go off the ball and Rondo is going to easily find him. Like, these 2, they only won 1 championship together, but they were not a duo to be trifled with. Even though Paul Pierce was the best player on the team, they needed a good point guard and a good catalyst. Like, this is just being iconic. And if we're going to do like a ranking, like an all-time ranking, these guys wouldn't even make the list. Like, and I'm just going to be honest with you. These guys, they wouldn't make it this high on the list, if that makes sense. And they would be rather low, and they wouldn't be a really high option in my opinion. Now, the next duo, it's going to be a little bit controversial, but this is just in my opinion because, you know, it's my list, so I can say whatever I want. And it's James Harden and Russell Westbrook. Now, again, it's just being iconic. And when they played together, when they were on OKC and they made the finals and they went up against LeBron, I really liked the performance that they put on for the NBA and in the finals for the Thunder. Now, one of the reasons, but that wasn't even my favorite, like, you know, moment where James Harden and Russell Westbrook have been teammates, because they've been teammates on multiple occasions. The Thunder, Houston, and now on the Clippers. Now, their time on Houston, that was one of my favorite like brands of basketball to watch. They were that Houston Rockets team in 2019, 2020. They changed the NBA, and they changed the way that teams view how to play basketball. Like, we talk about Steph Curry influencing the game and the three-point shooting. The Houston Rockets capitalized on that opportunity for 3 straight years. They didn't win a championship in that allotted time, but they tried their best, and the new additions and the lineups that they made were really, really impressive. Like, and they were really, I mean, they didn't really work in the end of the day, unfortunately, but they still, again, it still completely changed the game. And the reason why I say this is because the small ball lineup that Russ and Harden were running, so first off, Russ played some of the best basketball I've ever seen in that small ball lineup, along with James Harden. And that 5-out spacing, it implemented a new mechanic to the game that wasn't previously implemented before, and that changed the game dramatically. Like, now there are other teams that are willing to run an all shooting lineup. Granted, they would rather run pick and rolls with the center being the other option, but aside from that, most of the time you have to be able to shoot, and this was the catalyst of everyone needs to be a shooter. And that small ball lineup, it was really fun to watch. And on top of that, I just like the two MVPs being on the same team with each other. Like, that's just, what's there not to like about that? Because, again, these two, they won the MVP separately. Russ won it before James Harden. And then you put them both together in isolation. It was really fun to watch, watching them both work in the paint and watching James Harden hit his step backs. And now, another iconic duo is Derek Fisher and Kobe Bryant. Now, this isn't really... Derek Fisher is, like, he's known around, like, the Lakers community and things like that. But the average NBA fan would the average fan and the average basketball fan would probably forget about Derek Fisher and the fact that he has 5 championship rings, all with Kobe Bryant. And, again, every player on the championship team is most important, and the Lakers would not win without Derek Fisher, and especially not without Kobe Bryant. Derek Fisher has hit very crucial shots for the Lakers when they really needed him to in the postseason. So I feel like this duo, obviously, I grew up watching Kobe. Kobe was my favorite basketball player, and so in my opinion, I knew about I like Derek Fisher, and I knew about Derek Fisher, and I knew what he has done with Kobe. So I had to put him on the list. Now, I know what all of you guys are thinking, but you should have added Magic Johnson and Byron Scott, and you should have added Bob Cousy and Havlicek and all those other guys. And I'm like, yes, you are right, but we don't have enough time for that. And on top of that, I wasn't born around their time, so I would rather put have players on the list that I've watched and I've seen and could say it's iconic. So with that, we are out of time for the third segment, so now I will go ahead and go into the fourth segment, where I talk about the Cavs drama, your guys' favorite topic. I do see that comment, and I will go ahead and acknowledge the comment after this short break as we break into the fourth segment, so stay tuned for that. I will be right back.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
And we are back with the fourth segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this fourth segment, we are going to be talking about more Cavs drama. Before I actually talk about the Cavs drama, there is a comment, and I would like to acknowledge it. It's from Lil Fettuccini yet again. Is Minnesota going to win one game? Well, I don't think so. The odds are very much stacked against them. So, for starters, they aren't going to be playing home in Game 4. They're going to be playing away. And Kyrie is also undefeated in closeout games for his career. So that's another narrative that's another sort of thing that they have to go up against, and a little stigma that they have to go up against. The fact that Kyrie is undefeated in closeout games. And with him being undefeated in closeout games, the odds are just so stacked against them. I'm not entirely sure if they have enough left in them to even win a single game in this series. And with how this is going to get swept under the rug a lot, maybe not until the end of the series, but Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns have been playing some of the worst basketball I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, if you look at box plus minus, Karl Anthony Towns is minus 17 and Anthony Edwards is minus 19. That is really, really bad for the postseason. And Gobert, for all the hate that he gets for not being able to stop the pick and roll, he's plus 3 in box plus minus. So those two players are playing horribly in this playoff series. And if this trend continues, I don't really think they have enough in them to win the game in this series. Like, your two best scorers are shooting 37 to 111 together. That is bad. That is really, really bad. And there's really no other way around. There's no other way around, like, the fact that they're avoiding all of this criticism from the media is insane to me. Like, I have not, like, if this was Jason Tatum, God forbid if this was Jason Tatum, or if this was LeBron James, God forbid if this was LeBron James, they would not hear the end of it. The media would slander them to the death. Like, that is bad. Like, that there's no other way to put it. There's no other way to, like, say it. Like, there's no nice way to say it. There's no mean way to say it. It's just bad. Like, period, done. So I don't think they're going to win a single game. But that's my thought. So with that out of the way, we can go into the Cavs drama and explain exactly what I mean by this Cavs drama. So it's gotta be your guys' favorite segment now. That's the only news that's going on over the off season, aside from in the postseason, aside from the playoffs that are happening. And so going into the Cavs drama, there's obviously a narrative around Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell saying that Darius wants to get traded because he doesn't like playing with Donovan Mitchell. That's the narrative. That's what I thought. That's what a lot of people thought. That's what the story was in the beginning. But here we have Tony Pesta saying different. Now, he writes, once a narrative is planted, it can be impossible to uproot, and many believe that Darius Garland's disorderly 2023 to 2024 campaign is pinned on pairing him with Donovan Mitchell. And he says that this isn't really true. This would be a band-aid solution for a deeper issue in Garland's development. That's what he's saying. Garland had the best individual season of his career in his first year next to Mitchell, while his production marginally decreased. His efficiency and all-around impact improved. Garland was no longer strained by carrying an entire offense, as Mitchell's ability to draw a crowd paired nicely with Garland's talent for manipulating help defenders. Lineups featuring both of the guards posted a net rating of 8.9, which was in the 94th percentile in the NBA in last season. So he says we can pick gripes with the offense occasionally, resorting to a your turn, my turn play style, but having two dynamic guards who can dice up a defense in different ways is valuable. Even this past season, which was the worst Garland has looked since he was a rookie, the duo maintained a respectable plus 5.7 net rating, which is in the 81st percentile. When on the floor, it wasn't the two of them together that caused headaches. It was Garland's minutes without Mitchell that provided the migraines. So his argument is saying that the issue with Darius Garland wasn't the fact that he was playing with Mitchell. It was the fact that he wasn't playing with Mitchell, which is a very interesting dynamic to put out there, because normally when you aren't, at least with most of the duos, when you aren't getting that much production because of you being the second option, you aren't really, like, when you're not getting that many touches, forget about the word production. When you aren't getting that many touches, it makes it more difficult to reach that same level of production. But for Darius Garland, it seems to be the opposite, or he's claiming that it seems to be the opposite. The Cavs went 9-12 this season with Garland available, but not Mitchell. Those lineups held just a +1 net rating in the 57th percentile, and directly contradict the notion that Garland needs a new home to return to his former self. Now, Garland is hyper-reliant on his three-point shooting. He's an undersized guard who cannot put pressure on the rim. This is an easy problem for opposing defenses to solve. Even though his playmaking, Garland cannot always impact the game if his perimeter shot isn't falling. This made lineups without Mitchell juiceless in a season where Garland struggled more than usual to establish an offensive rhythm. This is all what he has to say. So Garland's trials this season include everything with a broken jaw to downright sloppiness. The least of Darius Garland's issues, however, was his backcourt running mate. Opportunities to dominate his role next to Mitchell were plentiful throughout the year. Garland's limitations are what held him back. So it's not a revelation to say that 6'1 guards don't carry NBA teams. Only a handful of players have accomplished such a feat in any meaningful capacity. This is why Cavs swung for a talent such as Mitchell in the first place, which, again, it makes sense, but it just hasn't really seemed to work. So the role presented itself to Garland all season. He played more without the ball, with his usage rate reaching a 3-year low and his assisted field goal attempts bordering on a career high. So these are, all of the things that keep happening while he's in the lineup with Donovan Mitchell. A fine line exists between actively working off the ball and deferring too much. Garland often did the latter by standing idle whenever he wasn't directly involved in the play. Which I don't see why there's a problem with that. It's just creating space and getting ready to shoot the ball. It makes total sense to stand idle and do that. But he is a gifted shooter, yet he finished in the bottom half of the league in catch-and-shoot three-point attempts with just 2.5 a game, which is probably why it seemed like he was just standing there doing nothing. The Cavs can't afford for Garland to be this inactive away from the ball, and neither can any team he could play for in the future. So it seems like really the biggest problem that Garland had was sort of coaching schemes and how the teams utilize him in the rotations and in the roster. So I sort of see that point, but at the same time, I really don't. It was all down to, because at the end of the day, he admits to Garland being rather sloppy. And if Garland was being sloppy, then it would totally explain his play and how badly he performed. So I don't really, again, I think it's a little bit of a mix of both. I can see why the person who wrote this article made this argument in the first place. It is a very good argument. I cannot deny that. It is a very good argument to saying that, Garland, he may have been rather rusty, but at the same time, the Cavs and the rotations and the schemes weren't utilizing Garland to the fullest extent. And it makes sense because there have been several, times in the history of basketball where certain players, they play better under a specific kind of system because of how the coach utilizes that player under that system. So there are times where it could work and there are times where it can't work. It depends on a lot of different factors, not only to how well the players play together and how they mesh, but also how well the coach coaches them together and how they mesh. So it's a lot of different things that add on to each other. And I don't like that light setting. Never mind. I'm just going to leave it like that. So with that, we are out of time for this fourth segment, so we will go ahead and go into the fifth and the final segment where I talk about Pascal Siakam and the potential signing of a max contract from the Pacers in the 2024 free agency. So I'll be right back after this short break. Stay tuned. And we are back with the fifth segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. This is going to be a little bit of a shorter segment than the rest of them because there's not really much that needs to be talked about. So we're going to talk about the expectation that Siakam is going to get a max contract offer from the Pacers. This is coming from an article from Bleacher Report. The Pacers are reportedly expected to offer Siakam a max contract this summer. According to Shams, the state from The Athletic and Stadium, he said that re-signing Siakam is going to be the Pacers' biggest priority of the offseason. And let's see if there are some more quotes that I could go off. So Siakam is eligible for a 5-year, $245 million contract this summer. A full 5-year max would take Siakam through his 35th birthday, which is just a little fun fact to just add on to there. And definitely well-deserved for this Pacers team. Like, Siakam was a very good addition to the team. Like, he helped them a lot more than I thought he would, especially in the postseason. And, like, his production has been more than enough for the Pacers, and all that's left is to get better chemistry with the rest of the roster and, just continue to play their game. And all they really have to do is just really get that chemistry up and maybe get their defense to be a little bit better. That's really the only thing that the Pacers have to prove, like, with this lineup. And re-signing Siakam to pair him with Halliburton is going to be a must for this Pacers team. And along with, the entire team as a whole, they have a really good chemistry, like, as of right now. So I wouldn't really break them off just yet. The fact that they made it to the Eastern Conference Finals, and with the lineup that they had, because they essentially traded for Siakam like mid-season, and it's proven to be very, very effective. So, granted, they also got aided by the fact that most of the Eastern Conference teams they went up against were injured. Actually, yeah. 2 of the 3 Eastern Conference matchups that they went up against were injured. So maybe this team isn't entirely hyped out the way that it is, but Pascal Siakam is still a very important piece. Now, but all that money is, like, it's really, like, questionable for me. Like, I really do not like how so many of these players are making this much money. Like, it's definitely not deserved. But the problem is, with how the market is working now with NBA and the stars, if you don't offer a player money, like, if you don't offer a player, like, more money than he wants, then you're not going to get him, because 9 out of 10 times that player is going to decide to go to a different organization that is going to pay him. Like, there's no loyalty in this league anymore. So if you have to pay these players so much money, this is why they gave Jaylen Brown that huge contract and that made him the most paid player in the NBA after they lost to the finals because of him. Like, that was the biggest reason, because there is no loyalty in the NBA, and he would easily be able to go up and leave, and another team would be able to pay all the money that he wants. And that's the most important thing. And you can't allow that to happen, especially, like, if to one of your best players. You absolutely have to keep them on the team, assuming that it works. So, again, eligible for a $245 million contract. That is a lot of money. Now, the Pacers sent Bruce Brown, Jordan Norwood, and Kira Lewis, and 3 first-round picks just for Siakam in January, that is a very big trade as well. 2 of those first-round picks conveyed this year in a weak draft. So I guess it's kind of smart for them to do that, but the final first rounder is a protected first, numbers 1 through 4, in 2026 and 2027. If the Pacers draft in the top 4 in 2026 and 2027, the last pick converts to a pair of second-round picks. Again, it's a lot of trade details. It's very difficult to follow. Siakam averaged 21 points and 7 rebounds and almost 4 assists in the 41 regular season games with the Pacers. He's a 2-time All-Star, and he has settled into a tier of players who who are hard to elevate, according to the article. He's very good at a number of things, but elite at none. That's what they say. Now, I think he's like I don't want to be rude or mean to him because he does have a championship, but the point does stand. Like, he's good at a lot of things, but he's not like really elite at a specific facet of the game. In fact, the one thing that I think he's elite at is spin moves. Like, other than that, can't really say that he has much elite aspects to his game. He's not an elite shooter. He's not an elite shot creator. He's not an elite dunker. Like, he's not an elite finisher like that. Like, I mean, he's a great finisher, just not elite. And it's been a blessing. Siakam told reporters Monday night, "I'm really appreciative of everything. Coming from where I come from, it means a lot." So he was really happy for for getting traded to the Pacers. And Indiana could have competition in the open market if Siakam wants to explore his options, however. Like, the Sixers are armed with cap space and a title contending roster, and were reportedly interested in trading for Siakam before he was sent to Indiana. So the Sixers could only offer Siakam 4 years and $183 million if they hope to sign him outright. So again, there is competition, but the money talks. So not entirely sure like where he's going to decide to go, but chances are he's going to stay with Indiana because of the money and the fact that they're contending. So with that, we are out of time for this 5th segment, and that will be the end of the show. Like I said, it was going to be a much shorter segment than usual, so thank you so much for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Excuse me. Your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show and leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. And as usual, please remember to use the link in the description to get your comments recognized, or the link displayed below the ticker on every single show segment. Really helps with the show, makes the show much more interactive between myself and you guys. The link is GSMCPodcast.net. You can see it below in the ticker. That is all I have for you today. Thank you once again for tuning in. I am your host, Nelson, and as always, take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit.